Hello, everybody.
Hi. We're continuing in Ray Franz's In Search of Christian Freedom. The chapter is A Congregation of Free People. We're on page 687 at the subhead, Restricted Views Caused by Preconceptions. Aside from the leanings of certain translations, we ourselves may often allow what we are accustomed to today to color our understanding of the past. We naturally tend to transpose or project backward existing customary viewpoints, superimposing them on past circumstances. If we live in a highly organized society or are accustomed to a structured religious system, we may allow this to influence our understanding of scriptural expressions in ways that go beyond what the evidence shows.
If we see the word minister in a scripture, we may think of religious ministers as we see them today. Yet the word used by the Christian writers, diakonos, means simply a servant, helper, assistant. The lowly, humble sense of the word is perhaps best expressed in Jesus' expression, quote, and this is from Matthew 20, 25 to 28 in the New English Bible, "In the world, rulers lord it over their subjects, and their great men make them feel the weight of their authority. But it shall not be so among you. Among you, whoever wants to be great must be your servant, diakonos, that is, minister. And whoever wants to be first must be the willing servant of all, like the Son of Man. He did not come to be served," and again using the verb diakoneo, to be ministered to. "He did not come to be served, but to serve."
In this basic sense, every Christian, not just one or a few persons in a group, should be ministers, that is, persons who place themselves at the service of others. Being a minister in this sense is far different from what most persons today would understand the term to mean. Then he has a footnote. It's the Watchtower organization goes beyond this basic sense of service in its insistence that all baptized witnesses are ordained ministers. It endeavors to equate them with denominational ministers who hold an office by virtue of ecclesiastical ordination. Contrast the article in the Watchtower of December 1st, 1975, and that of March 15, 1981, which latter article equates baptism with an ordination ministry. Ceremony. Yes.
The same Greek word is rendered deacon in some cases, and this too likely causes us to think in terms of church office, whereas again the sense is simply that of a helper or assistant, one who serves in some needed way. The scriptures give us no details and lay out no specific functions or forms of service for those called on in this way to serve for the benefit of a group.
Translations often render the term episcopus as bishop, and it is nearly impossible for the reader not to think in terms of ecclesiastical office in such case. Even where the more correct rendering overseer is found, however, there still may be the tendency to think of oversight in an official and organizational sense. I thought that way until working on the article Overseer for the Aid to Bible Understanding book, and then found that the basic sense of the term does not at all require such view. As the material prepared for that work states in connection with the original source of the term,
the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament shows that the verb forms episkopeo and episkeptomai were used in the basic secular sense of to look upon, to consider, to have regard to something or someone, to watch over, to reflect on something, to examine it, to submit it to investigation, and to visit, being used in this latter sense, especially of visits to sick ones, either by ministering friends or a doctor. The same dictionary shows that the Septuagint version uses these terms in the deeper sense of to be concerned about something, to care for something, and applies it in this way to a shepherd and his sheep. And that's a direct quote from the Aid to Bible Understanding.
Since in its secular use the term episcopus can be used to mean to superintend, scrutinize, and inspect, we could superimpose on the references in the Christian scriptures the idea of an organizational superintendent or supervisor who oversees the activity of others, inspecting and urging them on in their assigned work. But why should we, when the term itself does not require that? Even where such a definition might be admissible, why adopt it in preference to the equally basic and valid sense of a caring interest, or looking out for, or visiting a person out of concern for his or her needs? Surely that sense harmonizes far better with the spirit of Christ's expressions to his disciples, the principles of humble service he set out. Paul captures this spirit in his statement, and here he quotes from the New English Bible, 2 Corinthians 1:24. Do not think we are dictating the terms of your faith. Your hold on the faith is secure enough. We are working with you. And then he includes Jerusalem Bibles, our fellow workers with you for your own happiness.
And again, a footnote, this time referencing Robert Banks, the Anglican minister he's referred to several times before. Banks says, finally, the terms episkopos, that is overseer, and diakonos, deacon or minister, themselves should be freed of the official ecclesiastical connotations they have for us today, for they are not essentially different from the various other pastoral terms Paul uses. No real evidence exists to suggest that these terms had any technical meaning at this time. This is confirmed by the fact that in the 2nd century, Ignatius and Polycarp know of no episcopal pattern in the church at Philippi. I'm a little bit leery of that quotation because I don't think Banks, being an Anglican minister, would have said that there was no evidence of episcopal pattern in the church as a whole, so I'm not sure what Ray is trying to do with this, except that we know, having recently studied Ignatius and Polycarp, that most of the churches that Ignatius is writing to do have a single bishop and what they call a clergy class, i.e. deacons, who themselves are under the administration of elders. So whatever structure the individual churches have, and there is a truth, of course, that not just Philippi might be an exception here, but Rome itself, because there's no evidence that there was a single bishop in Rome at this time. So maybe the individual churches were being shown a latitude, and they weren't judging each other based on what structure they locally chose.
Yeah. I also thought this statement that he makes at the beginning, where he talks about our kind of coloring the past with what we view things as today. So he's thinking that we're thinking minister, and then we immediately go, or clergy, or any of those terms, and we immediately go to the kind of thing we saw in the witnesses in the organization, where elders were, pushy, or, not
Dominating?
Yeah, dominating personalities. That wasn't even always the case with all of them. But, I mean, when you start looking at your past and thinking everybody has the same past, or sees the same problem where they're going. And I would have to say that I think the ministers that I met over the years and that served us believed they were doing a service. That was their motivation. That was where their heart was. They wanted to be used by God to serve the people.
Yeah, and I have to say that in the churches we've been in, we've never seen a minister, or combination of ministers, sometimes several ministers in one church, who had the dominating spirit.
No,
I know that such things exist. I know they exist.
Yeah.
But to assume they exist, as I think
everywhere. Yeah.
I think Ray's kind of tending in that direction, i.e. official positions will make for power
Yeah, will make people this way.
power hungry and domineering in their attitude. I don't think that's the case.
I think there's more checks and balances within the church than there is with the organization, where
course.
everybody has to hold to a certain line, and you all have to be agreeing with what the Watchtower says.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens then.
In a theocracy, ordered like the Watchtower theocracy, this is bound to happen. But churches aren't organized theocratically sometimes, unfortunately. But I think he's playing down the laying on of hands principle, which we brought up in the last video.
Yeah.
Hebrews 6:1 and 2 assumes that this is a basic teaching of the Christian churches.
And he's not recognizing any necessity for leadership. You know, can you imagine a country that had no leaders? That everybody was supposed to just be serving one another and leave it to people to be nice and kind and do all these things? You know, there is a need for leaders.
And the laying on of hands principle makes it a public demonstration of a community recognizing authority of these specific persons that are going through this, what you might call ceremony.
Yeah.
Ordination. Well, the apostles were they ordained or were they not?
And were they trained for a purpose? They were going to be the start of the church. They were trained to be leaders.
So the public recognition of the credentials of any leaders is the issue here, and I think we're in danger of losing that in our pendulum swing from our pyramid theocracy that we're used to. We're in danger of going to the opposite extreme. So next time, it's the elders in the Christian community. We wanted to link 2 videos. One was on the apostolic credentials from Acts chapter 1.
Yeah.
And the other one was about the transfer. Earlier in the book, Ray has talked about the transfer of authority
From Moses to Joshua.
and we have a video about that too.
Yeah.
So we'll put that one up on your screens. Next time, elders in the Christian community.